so folks can get a good look at you and get a chance to know you a little bit here today. I told you before we came on screen that we keep this kind of light and airy and have some fun, and so it's really more about chopping it up in terms of your story and your background because I love how you got into the business. Like kudos to Chuck and Cliff for looking for talent in different places. You know what I mean? We're so focused on we're looking for people with experience, etc., as opposed to looking for great people and giving them experience. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about the business in general. I definitely want to talk about the career path for young folks and specifically young women in our industry, because I think it's important to make sure that they know there are folks out there blazing the trail, just like yourself. So as we get started over here, talk a little bit about who Kaylee is and how it was growing up for you, and ultimately how you ended up getting into the business.
Oh, okay. So we're gonna go back to like growing up.
Yeah, man. Bring us back. I mean, you don't have to start. I was born in a small town, but what were you like in high school? What were the things that interested you? And talk a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, so in high school, I loved to work. So I started working at Subway when I was 15. So I think I was a sophomore because I wasn't driving yet. So my parents drove me. And the Subway I worked at wasn't the one that was in the town I lived. It was several towns over because I just had a friend that worked at Subway, and then she knew the owner, and then you just get a job, kind
Yep.
of thing. So yeah, they drove me all the time to work, and I worked after school. I worked on weekends, so it was a lot of driving, and it was during a time when gas prices were really high, and my parents drove an F-250, so it was very expensive to take me to work.
Kind of a flashback these days, Kaylee.
Yeah, totally. And I remember my mom saying, like, it was a really good thing for me, and she just didn't care. She just wanted to help, because I loved it.
Sure.
Um, yeah, so fast forward a little bit, I was heading into graduating high school. The owner of the Subway I was working at had built a new Subway that was down the road from the one I was working at, and she wanted me to be the manager. So there was a lot of working my senior year of high school because I was hiring people for that store and training them while I was working at the store the old store or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I started managing the Subway right out of high school, and I really loved it. I loved the team aspect of it, and really creating relationships, I guess, with the employees, because I learned a lot because I was young. I was 17, so I was
So wait,
learning.
now you're 17 years old, and they're entrusting you with managing the entire operation at that point.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I
That's
had a lot of
awesome. I
help,
love it.
but yeah.
Let me ask
Yeah.
you a question. Did you benefit from having good systems and good detail in terms of processes that helped you manage the flow of the business, that gave you the opportunity to pair that with creating relationships and creating a team environment or a culture within the operation?
Yeah, exactly. I felt like we were really efficient. And I really a lot of that had to do with my boss, my owner. So she was one of the I would say one of the best Subway owners because she was very involved in training and giving us the opportunity to learn. And I just felt like I wanted to be most because we were a lunch rush store. I
Hmm.
mean, Subway's a lunch, but we were in the business area, so we were line out the door every lunch.
Hmm.
So I remember implementing processes to make it so that we could serve people as fast as we could. You only have half an hour, maybe an hour on your lunch.
Right.
So, yeah, I think I can't remember your question now, but I think yes, the processes and the people understanding different personalities too. It was a
Sure.
struggle working like certain people didn't really mesh well with certain people, so we had to kind of switch it up and have them work the day shift and not the night shift and kind of
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, there's a lot of the franchise systems that are out there. You benefit from the fact that they've really worked the kinks out in terms of systems and processes, and it's a great opportunity, especially for younger people, to understand the power and really the scalability of systems and processes. And I think it kind of preps you for an opportunity to run or be part of even bigger businesses as you move on in your career. Talk a little bit about how you got into automotive, because when I read up on you, I noticed that you had a rather unorthodox and little different path into the business. Talk a little bit about how you got into the business.
Yeah. So Chuck Hartley and Cliff Cope, they're the founders of Parts Edge, and they were my regular customers because Parts Edge is in the same parking lot, and that Subway's still there. Every time I go to visit San Diego, still there. But what was I going with that? So they were my regular customers. Chuck definitely loves Subway way more than Cliff.
Good to know. That's good to know.
He was a fan. Yeah. So because he was a parts manager, so he was very what is that, routined in like the certain sandwiches he got and like with certain days. And then Cliff was kind of like, you never knew what he was gonna get. But anyways, I got to know them.
It takes all kinds to make a business work. So opposites tend to attract.
They do. And they're completely opposite. And so, yeah, I got to know them. I was at this stage in my life where I was managing, I was going to college. I was never really a school person. Like I just kind of breezed through high school because I was working a lot, and working was more important to me than school. But I got good grades.
Totally.
Like an overachiever.
Well, it's funny, when you start to get that taste of what a paycheck feels like, and you have an opportunity to then exercise a little buying power and a little bit of independence, from mom and dad. I mean, I watch it with my own kids right now that are in college, and certainly when they've got their own funny money to run around with, there's a little bit more swag to their swagger, if you know what I mean.
Oh, definitely. I was feeling that. And I knew I had to buy my own car. So I was like, I got to start working now.
Yeah, you got to figure it out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, I got to know them. They presented, and they just basically asked me one day if I knew someone that was hiring. And, it kind of went over my head. A lot of people were like, they were asking you if you were interested. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that.
So they're recruiting you right there on the spot, and you don't even realize it at that point.
Yeah, I didn't realize it. They're being nice, and they don't want to overstep because this is my place of work. But
sure.
I thought about it because like I said, I was going to college. I was kind of in this like, I don't know if I want to stay with. I knew I didn't want to stay with Subway for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. I considered owning one. But I really wasn't in that position. So, I took them up on their offer, and I started working for them, and I got to learn what the auto business was like in the parts world, because parts is all we focus on. But yeah.
So let me ask you a question. You get into the business. What are your initial observations, and what are the things that you were impressed by, and what are the things that you were surprised by as you first got into the business?
That's a good question. I think I was because I had no experience really in like an office environment and working with like in that type of environment. I was always fast paced and working in retail essentially. So my first impression was it was a lot kind of like Subway in a way, like the franchise part and dealing with all the rules and guidelines. So I saw a lot of similarities when I went over. I don't know if I'm still here, so I obviously like it. Yeah.
So there's no ball and chain and shackles around your ankles keeping you over a Parts Edge. Tell me a little bit about the business, Kaylee, in terms of Parts Edge. What do you guys focus on? Who's your, obviously your target market? What are the kind of things that you do for clients, et cetera? Talk a little bit about Parts Edge for us.
We work with all kinds of dealerships all over the country, focusing on parts managers and inventory control. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things there's a lot of data involved in managing an inventory, sure. And the DMSs are capable of it. And we have just over the years found those, niches of where we fit in and make it more efficient for the parts manager.
Yeah, I think it's critical, especially right now, as we transition into a bit of a different type of an economy than what we've had over the course of the last 2 years. Ron and I talk about it all the time, with respect to, we keep hearing about this looming recession and economic downturn. we're starting to feel a little bit, but I believe there's always a bright side to it. And the bright side is usually wrapped up in efficiencies, economies of scale, cost reduction, if not elimination. And then finding those, you said niches before, finding those niches in your operation where you can squeeze out or wring out some additional profit opportunities as well. And the smartest, most industrious operators out there and leaders in the business are the ones that are really effective in doing that.
Oh, definitely. Yes.
Are you hearing that from dealers and the managers that you interact with on a regular basis? Are they starting to focus on things that are going to help them weather the storm, as they say, in the coming months and years?
I feel it. Yeah. I feel like, because I've been with Parts Edge overall 10 years and I've been in the sales and marketing role for about 6. And it wasn't up until the last 2 years where I'm actually talking to dealers and GMs more, where that really, they kind of just pushed me off to the parts manager. Like, oh, my parts manager does a good job. Talk to him. And now they're like questioning, like, how can we be better? They're looking at it a little bit differently. So yeah, I think that definitely we're looking at it to be more efficient. How can we make more in what we have?
Yeah, it's such a great point. There's two things that you said there really got my attention. And Ron, you and I have talked about this a lot, and that is seeing dealers and general managers becoming even more involved in the day-to-day and the nitty-gritty on fixed operations, really sharpening their skills and their intel, really getting a grip on the data, as you said before, Kaylee. And then the other piece is that, they have to find ways as they move forward that are going to give them more efficient net profitability based on the business that they're currently doing today. If they can't grow the business in terms of revenue, how can we be more efficient in our operation to wring out cost and create a better net bottom line for the operation? Make sense?
Oh yeah, that's exactly what it is. Because we're showing, the categories of the inventory that are wasted money and where can that money be better used.
How about in terms of fulfillment too, in terms of optimizing inventory and parts availability, especially in light of the fact that we've had some supply chain disruption issues? Are those things that you see dealers and GMs and fixed operations managers focusing on now? And what are they doing out there in the marketplace to address those challenges?
I think right now they're just being more proactive because it's kind of out of everyone's hands as far as like we can't just make parts appear. But I feel like they're being more proactive and looking further ahead and to being more efficient with the schedule and if you don't have the part, don't have the customer come in kind of thing. But with our parts managers, I don't feel like I'm hearing as many complaints because I feel like because of what we're doing in the DMS, they're able to be a little bit more ahead of what they actually need.
Right. Yeah. Well, being proactive certainly helps, and as we were saying before, taking a look at your business through a different lens than we have over the course of the last 2 years. A lot of dealers and GMs and FODs are really focusing hard on the back end of the business, certainly on the used car on the back end of the business, because it's what drives the profitability in the end. But when you take a look at being strong up the middle, right, with your parts, service, and used car operations, and they're so deeply intertwined. We talk about the recon process and, creating efficiencies in the recon end of the used car business. Parts plays a big role there. You talk about what you just said before in terms of availability, making certain that from a recon-based perspective, creating efficiencies in parts procurement and scheduling becomes a huge benefit to the dealers. The quicker they can get those used vehicles out onto the line and turned, the quicker they can convert it into cash and go get another pre-owned vehicle. Parts plays a big role there as well. Talk to me in your opinion, based on what you're hearing out there, the impact of electric vehicles. It's the hottest topic out there in the marketplace today. I've got very specific opinions, as Ron knows, about the EV impact in our business. I am not 100% sold on how EV is going to impact our business just based on the numbers. But what your feelings are on what you're hearing out there with respect to EVs and the impact on the parts business.
So, I feel like we still have a lot to figure out in regards to EVs as far as the foundation goes and how it can support. EVs, but I mean, they're here. So we're going to figure it out. And I do think that tires are going to be a bigger deal. So that's important. And that's, parts. And so, we're always going to need to fix things and maintain things. So fixed ops is going to be even more of a necessary need than anything, because especially since we're figuring this out, I don't think that they're going to hit the ground running and work perfectly, right? I think we're going to run into a lot of errors and things that we're trying to fix, and fixed ops needs to support that.
Yeah, no question. This is my buddy Dave Boyle, the CEO over at Traction.
Just thinking about it.
He's probably smiling right now.
Oh yeah.
Hearing that come out of your mouth, because the thing that I think goes unnoticed very often is the effect that the weight of the batteries has on these tires, and they tend to wear out much more quickly. And so getting a head start and making sure that you understand how to optimize the tire end of your business, not just for purely tire sales, but we talk about alignments, we talk about all the other ancillary opportunities that come along with tire sales. It's not simply about selling more tires. It's about making sure you're optimizing that ownership experience for your clients coming into your service drive, which is what keeps them coming back ultimately. And so I'm so happy to hear you say that. My question becomes, how much of the charging station element will impact the fixed operations business? Will it be that we've got to have somebody on site where we've got to have parts on hand for the EV charging stations? I mean, that's going to be critical as well, because we need to be efficient and we need to be convenient when it comes to the charging piece of it. And I'm really curious to see how that piece of it plays out moving forward. Will it be something that's going to be subcontracted out by the dealers? Will the OEMs jump in and have a program? Will it be a combination of those two things? What are you hearing from dealers out there in terms of their concerns, and then also their optimism with respect to investing in charging stations and the EV platform?
I never even thought about the maintaining the charging stations at the dealerships. I never thought about like what that would look like. I mean, are the techs going to fix those, or are they going to be outsourced? Right. Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'm hearing with just based on some of the conversations that it's taking a long time for them to get installed, and then there's that maintenance part. Like when they're not working, there's not really a process, I guess, figured out. So that's like I said, I feel like there's going to be a lot of figuring out, because we have never done anything like this before, and that's where it's going to be a lot of growing pains, I think.
Well, there's no question. The reason why I'm a bit bearish on the whole EV conversation, Kaylee, is simply because when you take a look at the math, you've got, roughly by any estimate, 288 million cars on light duty vehicles on the road in this country at any given time. And so, if you just take a look at the pure math in terms of replacing those vehicles on the car park with a new vehicle side, we're selling about 14 million cars a year. That's like a 30-year window to go to a complete transition to a full EV car park. And that's why I've got a little bit of skepticism. And I always caution our dealers about getting too crazy about the EV investments that they're making. I think it's got to be measured. I know that the folks in Washington, D.C., most of the state capitals and the OEM corporate offices are all bullish and excited about it. They've got their own underlying ulterior motives behind that, let's be clear. But the truth of the matter is that the infrastructure requirements and investments that they're asking from dealers really need to be, I believe, thought through a bit more clearly in terms of timing and level of investment that they put forward. Ford's plan to me is completely ludicrous and onerous, and that's why I question the motive behind it. Jim Farley's a smart guy. By all accounts. I've never met him, but I've watched his career over the years, and he's made a lot more right decisions than wrong ones. But I'm going to put the decision that they've made over at Ford right now into the absolutely crazy and maybe not necessarily with the most benign of intentions. When you see dealers out there that are a little bit skeptical, what are the things that are causing them to be skeptical in your mind in terms of the EV push that's going on right now?
I think what we just said, the infrastructure, and just pushing it a little bit before it's actually ready. So I feel like those are the concerns of And there are some brands that are kind of stepping back a little bit and not totally diving in. I think there needs to be, like you mentioned, there needs to be a balance of it because there, I don't know. There's going to be people that still want to drive gas or not want electric vehicles, right?
Yep.
I mean, we kind of have to have a balance.
Yep. All day long.
The smaller towns, yeah.
Guys, I'm sorry. I'm having a little bit of a battery issue here. I apologize.
You're okay. No worries.
I should plug
It's
in.
okay. Just want to make sure that I don't have an issue with us losing the feed here. So just bear with me one
No
second.
worries.
You reminded me to plug in my computer.
Good Lord.
Well, to your point, real quick, Kaylee, while Sandy's handling that, do you feel like hybrids might be a good segue in the meantime? You think that some manufacturers are going to kind of move to more of a hybrid model? Like you see Toyota never made a full commitment. And Sandy and I talk about this a lot. Like they never made a full commitment to EV per se, or came out and said what a lot of these other OEMs are saying. Do you feel that might be the bridge? And then you got people like myself where I'm always going to, for the most part, drive a gas vehicle more than likely because I love motors. I love cars. It's part of my life. It always has been. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the hybrid is I mean, we've had hybrid for how long?
Forever. At this point.
Why aren't we pushing that more first rather than fully electric? I don't know. I really don't know the answer to it.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm kind of on the same page as you. Like I'm probably gonna drive a gas powered vehicle for a while because
right.
I like to off road and I don't see EV off roading.
Sure.
Well, look, range anxiety is a real thing for sure. You talk, we interviewed Alicia Thomas recently, off of Autovate last year, and we talked about those things, people taking long distance trips. I mean, it's not practical and convenient yet. And one of the things I think that makes me so skeptical is that, I think we have these unrealistic expectations in terms of what we can accomplish in the short term. We kind of overestimate what we can accomplish in the short term and underestimate the value of taking a little bit more of a long-term approach to migrating over from your traditional fossil fuels over to these renewables and electric vehicles. Because the truth is, Kaylee, all we're doing is moving the pollution from the tailpipe to the energy production piece of it at the power plants. Mm-hmm. And the truth is that they're not capable of handling the kind of power consumption that will require. Number one, and B, we're not even close in terms of the renewable energy resources that we'll need to power things. And so that's why I want people to kind of tap the brakes, if you will, on the EVs. I love the EVs from a performance perspective. I love theoretically what they represent, potentially in the future, but they're not zero emissions vehicles by any stretch of imagination. That does not exist. Yeah. Okay? When they perfect hydrogen, great. I'm all in. And I know that General Motors and Toyota, I think specifically, are working on that hydrogen solution. Sure. But
Hyundai too, and a company called
Hyundai as well. That's right. Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah. So ultimately, I think that the EVs over time we're going to see that this is going to evolve even more so, and I'm just hoping that cooler heads will prevail. Let's switch gears for a second. I want to talk about talk about how you got into the business and you came into an industry that has been traditionally dominated by men, for sure. We're seeing a really awesome transition right now to a more diverse workforce across all different levels in our business. When we're talking about dealership level, OEM, suppliers, et cetera. Talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what the challenges were early on as a young lady getting into this business, getting an audience with folks that were decision makers in the dealership world. What kind of challenges did you face? What kind of lessons did you learn? And what kind of relative experience would you impart to young people, and then specifically young ladies getting into the business?
I would say a lot of the early on things that I was running into were more internal with myself because most people are pretty hard.
Now, I'm going to stop you right there. That's interesting as hell for you to say, and I applaud your courage to acknowledge that. Talk a little bit about what that means.
Well, I would say my confidence level. So I was young, so I think I was probably about 20 or so when I started working for Parts Edge, and the confidence level of learning a whole new industry, and then when I transitioned into sales, I was a little bit older and had more well, let me back up and tell the whole story. So
Good.
I haven't always been with Parts Edge. So I worked in the operations side for, uh, a couple of years. And then I went into, I left. I went into real estate. I was like, I'm in this like figuring out stage of my life. I don't really know what I want. I was happy, but I was like, I've always been interested in sales and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
I got my real estate license. I sold software to title and escrow companies all across the country.
Sure.
Because while I was getting my real estate license, I needed more flexible hours. So that's why I did that. And so, yeah, when I came back to Parts Edge and started selling, I was a little bit older, had more experience, but I still, had that confidence. Like, I feel like I got beat up a little bit. Like whenever I would call some dealerships and like to ask them questions, and they're kind of like, well, what do you know, kind of thing. But I'm like, I think part of that was me too. Like in my presentation and the way that I was talking, I was questioning my own self. So how could you believe what I'm saying? So that's kind of what I discovered. So it wasn't all their fault, but I do still sometimes run across like where I have a sales meeting and then I'll have Chuck basically repeat everything I said. I'm like, well, I said the same thing, but now that he's saying it, you know, so yeah.
It's funny you say that, because a lot of times, that confidence piece is exactly what kills most careers early on. Folks are so concerned about what other people are thinking about them, whether or not they're going to take me seriously. What are the things that you needed to do outside of getting outside of the business? What are the things you did to build your confidence?
I would say I started reading a lot, like self-help books, really discovering my me.
Talking to two big fans.
What book had the most influence on you?
I'd say it's more of a spiritual book, but The Universe Has Your Back is one that really changed me.
Okay.
And then the Secret series by Rhonda.
Yeah. Ron Byrne. Yeah, absolutely. My wife is a huge fan of The Secret. She's the one, I got to give her credit. My wife, Mary, an amazing person to start, but she's the one that turned me on to The Secret. She really, at the right time in my life, I think when that book is revealed to you, it's usually at the right time in your life that you're ready to listen to it and absorb some of the secrets. No pun intended.
Timing is everything, as we all know.
It always is. Yeah.
I remember I was cleaning out my grandma's house because she had just passed away, and I found that book. And I had always known about it. I think she had even told me about it in my younger years. And I finally was like, I need to read this book.
That's the universe right there for sure.
And then my dad passed away, and I found The Magic, which is part of the series, I think it's the second or third book. And I was like, okay, there's another sign. I need to read this one.
Yeah. And what part of those series, in your opinion, had the most effect on your confidence? What was it that stuck out? Because I'm in the middle right now of reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And being present and just being, right? Not thinking about past and future. What was the one thing that you think from those type of books that really stuck out to you that affected your confidence and helped you there?
Gosh, it's been a few years now. I'm trying to think.
What do you carry with you? Like, is it a mantra or something from it? Maybe because some people have that.
I think it's more of like, if I can believe in something, then it's going to happen. I think that's what I got the most out of it. Like, if I can write it down, if it seems crazy, even if I feel like it'll happen or believe that it'll happen, in a sense, it'll happen. I think the biggest thing I learned over the years, though, is the patience of it, because it may not happen when you think you want it to happen.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we definitely, as you agree, we live in an instant gratification world. So, a lot of times we're like, well, we want results now, but you have to go through a certain process. And as you're manifesting these things that, you're putting out into the universe, how does it come back to you, and how much law of attraction are you using? Hold on, Sandy, we lost, and he's calling me. So let me just get him. SC. Okay. Are you dropped out? Like you have no internet?
Uh-oh.
All right. We're gonna keep rolling. Try to get back in here. We're here. All right. Bye-bye. So we lost the solutionist for the time being. He is having a technical difficulty, but that's okay. But Kaylee, I absolutely love that was something that helped you with your confidence level and really helped you kind of, feel good about talking to dealers. Because to your point earlier about what you said, like, you mentioned Chuck would kind of reiterate a lot of the things you said.
Mhm.
Sandy has that kind of same effect where he can speak to any dealer out there and speak their language. And when I first started with Sandy,
Mhm.
I stumbled into automotive a little bit like you did in ways because I came from the restaurant industry, went to school, got out of school, and was like, what do I want to do next? And ended up in automotive. But to your point, when I left the dealership side and joined with Sandy, there were conversations I just couldn't have with some of these dealer owners and GMs and things like that. So it would be me sitting there just kind of observing and listening.
Mhm.
And like you said before, sometimes the things we want take time. Well, I'm
Yeah.
sure that as time has gone on, your conversations have changed. And when your conversations change, your outcomes change, right? Makes sense.
Oh, that's exactly what happened. The biggest thing is the patience of it. Like, I'm not gonna walk in and know everything and can speak the language of someone that's been in the auto industry since the 70s.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And what would you say would be another tip or piece of advice that you would give to a younger generation, whether guy or gal, getting into the industry, wanting to be in a position to be able to maybe make some leaps and bounds in their career, but would you tell them patience is the most important thing, and where would you point them to as a source for learning or knowledge, maybe in automotive?
That's what I was gonna say. I think getting more involved in groups and going to conferences, and just, having those conversations with people in the industry, that's how we grow and learn. So I'd say that's probably the biggest thing is getting more involved in those, and then that confidence will come, and your experience throughout the years, you're just gonna build that as you continue to stay in the industry.
Yeah, and I'd agree because also you got to be willing to make mistakes. A lot of times, Mike Poro here, hold on. He goes, Ron, the student always becomes better than the teacher. Amen, Mike. I appreciate you. That means I'm being a good student, my friend. But there'll always be a Jedi and a Padawan, just to reference Star Wars. But I appreciate you, Mike, for listening always and love you, brother. But you got to be willing to make the mistakes, right? And sometimes people, I guess, get bashful about making mistakes. But what would you say was a big mistake maybe you made that you was a big learning experience for you that like is really, really top of mind, when you think back to the beginning of your career? Was there something that really stood out that was like, okay, I know that this is something that's going to stay with me, through my career from here on out? Did that happen to you?
What when you said that instantly, I thought about how so when I started in sales and marketing with Parts Edge, they had sales, but they didn't have marketing. So there was a lot of implementation of like testing, trial and error because it wasn't all figured out.
Sure.
And so I think it might be a mistake looking back, but it also was a good thing. So my Chuck and Cliff were like, you got to start with the owners, you got to start there. And I kept running into, you got to talk to my parts manager. I don't deal with this stuff, kind of thing.
Sure, and having to shove it off. Yep.
Yeah. So, I kind of was like, you know what? I'm going to focus on the parts managers because, without them, we can only do so much in the DMS, and the parts manager's involvement is important to be more successful. And not to mention having upper management to go on that subject. But I think my mistake was to start with parts managers because in sales, you're like, you never start at not the bottom. I don't want to say they're at the bottom, but
No, because they're not. But you don't. You want to try to get to the highest level decision maker, so there's less conversations to be had, right? But continue.
exactly. So that's kind of where I feel like there was a mistake, and learning from that, I think I got to learn how to speak to parts managers. I got to learn their struggles, and so I wouldn't really consider it a mistake anymore, but it was something that I had to do. I had to make that mistake to start, not maybe at a decision maker level, to really learn more how to sell what we're doing and how to have those conversations.
Sure, and you bring up a great point, something that I call PFHD squared, which means pains, fears, hopes, dreams, and desires. And every single person has them, right? Every single business has them. And I think that one of the best things that we can do is sometimes kind of speak to loss aversion, right? Like, how are we going to help somebody avoid loss? And people will often do more to avoid loss than to go towards an equal or greater gain. In your opinion, what's the biggest challenge that you feel like a parts manager might be having, or one of these people that might not be the highest level decision maker, but how could you maybe build influence with them so that way you could get to the table with that higher level decision maker? What are some things that you speak to directly that allows you to have those conversations? Is there something that you kind of, is it a pain? Is it a fear? Is it a hope, dream, or desire that kind of starts the convo with those folks for you?
I would say it's a mixture, and I always start my conversations with wanting to know where the parts manager's goals and concerns are, because and learning about their background, because
Yeah,
it's like we can do what we do depends on the level of parts manager. If it's a newer parts manager, we're going to affect it a lot different, and the conversation is going to be different. So I
sure.
think by asking those types of questions and getting to know them and what they're striving for, that really allows them to open up and kind of express some of the struggles that they're having.
Sure.
Because I mean, historically, parts managers have always been like, I got it, I got everything figured out. Don't need help.
Yeah.
And yeah,
They kind of end up being siloed to their own section of the organization in a way, and they're like, we got this, we don't need anybody else in a way. But really, we could all always help each other. But you bring up a great point too, Kaylee, because a lot of times our conversations come off as pitches, and none of us want to be sold, right? We all want to be able to build value. Hey, the solutionist is back.
Guys, I am so sorry, Kaylee.
Welcome. We're talking about, Kaylee had just mentioned, Sandy, about what kind of conversation she ends up having with parts managers and how sometimes they feel segregated from maybe the rest of the dealership and saying, hey, I got this, I have this under control. But really, what the bigger conversation is it a pain, a fear, a hopes, a dreams, a desire that they might have, and how she starts that conversation. And we were just getting into a little bit more of not pitching people, right? She always kind of wants to learn more about them. And I was commending you, Kaylee, was where I was going with this, is learning about their background, where they've been, so you better understand of where they're going. And that's where we were, SC.
Well, I love it because it's consultative. It's not the pitch. Most people don't want to be pitched or sold, Kaylee, which you probably have figured out, on your own along the way. Most of them want help solving a problem, right? They want help, addressing a need or leveraging an opportunity. And so I'm assuming that's how you approach your interaction with, prospective new clients or the clients you're currently working with today.
Oh yeah, that's exactly. And that's what I was figuring out in the beginning. He was asking me like a mistake I made. And I was like, the mistake I feel like I made was I didn't start with the upper management or the decision maker. I started with the parts managers.
Sure.
And part of that was because I kept getting like, my parts manager's got it under control, talk to him, figure out if he wants it, or he or she. I always do that.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I know it's like one of those things where, but so I forgot where I was going with that.
Well, what you're saying is you're talking to folks that can actually say yes is really the most important thing. Can they make a decision? Most everybody can say no, Kaylee. It's getting to the folks that have the autonomy or the latitude to say yes to something that makes sense. And a lot of times, as you just alluded to, you have a dealer or a GM that's actually pushing you down to somebody in the food chain that can't make a decision and makes it more difficult for you to make progress. And the other piece is when you are pushed down to a level where somebody can't say yes or make a decision, you hit a roadblock or a stone wall. There's really nothing you can do. And ultimately, the dealership does not get effectively served. And that's the real shame of it all.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But I would say in the last couple of years, dealers are now, like we mentioned, focusing on parts, and
absolutely,
we're having those conversations.
No question about it. We have the opportunity to interact with a lot of what I would consider to be progressive and really smart dealer operators and GMs in this business as a function of business, bourbon, and cigars. Just a shameless little plug over here. I'm gonna put right at the bottom. We're coming up on Business Bourbon and Cigars #5 in San Antonio, but we talk about topics and challenges and opportunities in the industry that often go not unnoticed but unaddressed, and that's the cool part about masterminding with forward-thinking, proactive dealers. Michael Poro just chimed in before with a comment. He's a perfect example.
That's what I was pointing down.
That is proactive, that wants to empower his people. He wants to be engaged and involved, and does exactly what you're talking about. He rolls up his sleeves and he looks for ways to get things done. And that's ultimately what you're seeing happen more and more today, Kaylee, is you have consolidation going on in the business. So we've got a little bit more sophisticated levels of leadership, coming to the forefront, and folks that are really operating their dealerships like a business today, as opposed to the dealerships traditionally when I was brought up in the business, where it was really a lot of mom and pop stuff. And that's not a knock against the mom and pop world. I was a mom and pop operator myself and grew up in the business that way. But this business has elevated and become so much more sophisticated, so much more data oriented. And the pace and the scale and the scope really dictates and demands that we look at our businesses much differently than we have in the past.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, I apologize. I had to
it's all good.
Figure my power strip here. Something has happened, but anyhow, Kay, let's go back. I just want to step back over to your career path in the business and some of the things that you've been able to accomplish. What would you say is the greatest strength that you've been able to develop in yourself because of the personal development that you've gone through, reading books, listening to audio programs? I'm sure. What were let me ask you this: what was the most influential book you did read? You mentioned The Secret before. Would you put that at the top of the list?
Yeah. So I would definitely put that, because I think you missed how I found those books.
Oh, good,
and it was definitely universe talking to me, you need to read these books. So they were their top of the list.
There's no coinkydinks, as they say, Kaylee. It's not coincidence. I really believe that the universe does speak to you, whether it's God or the universe, whatever you want to attribute it to. Usually the tools and resources and experiences and opportunities that you need, if you're looking for them, right? Because finding is reserved for those that seek. In the immortal words of the great Jim Rohn, you were seeking for the kind of guidance and influence that you needed at that point in time. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, I was in this point of, things were going really well with Parts Edge, but they weren't as good as I wanted them to be. So I was always striving, because when I first started, there was so much opportunity that I saw with what we were doing. And I'm like, there's got to be more dealerships that need to hear about this. So that's where kind of the passion came from of I can't believe not more dealerships are using this, because this
right.
Because I'm hearing what other parts managers and dealers are saying, and I'm like, okay, we gotta get this out there. So, I kept every year I made bigger goals, and then I was at this point where I wasn't happy with where I was living. And so, because I grew up in San Diego, I was born and raised. I love San Diego, but I was just I was always there, and I had this desire to leave, and right. And so I convinced my husband, and he got laid off at one of his job that he loved very much. And it was kind of this opportunity. I was like, you know what? I think we need to leave, because
that takes courage.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so we sold everything. We bought a fifth wheel. And we were going to travel a little bit. We ended up in Arizona, and he got a job at a dealership. Wow. So that was one of the things that made us kind of okay, maybe we should stay here for a little bit, because he got an opportunity to be a parts manager with no experience. So it was.
Well, he kind of had a secret ace in the hole, for God's sake.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I always knew he would be a good parts manager, just his mentality and the way he thinks. I'm like, you're one of those annoyingly really good parts managers,
Methodical and logical, right?
Yes. Methodical, efficient, looks at every little outcome in detail and overthinks things. Yes.
Totally. We're going to get into some marriage counseling here now, for God's sake.
We don't get involved in that.
No, it's a good thing. No, it's a good thing.
No doubt. We're busting chops.
Yeah. Because I'm pretty.
The other thing I like about it, Kaylee, is that when you were looking at the fact that you wanted more opportunities, setting bigger goals. You didn't look outside for the opportunity to grow and to achieve what you were looking for. You looked inside. And I think that's a great lesson for young folks in our industry or any business for that point. Look inside for the opportunity to grow and thrive as opposed to looking outside. And I applaud you for that, because most folks don't want to do that. It's a little tougher to look at the person in the mirror and say, there's things that I can do differently or I can improve in order to improve the situation that I'm in right now or create opportunity for myself. So kudos to you.
Thank you. Yeah.
As Sandy would say, I just want to switch gears real quick
Switching, baby.
to how did you decide upon starting your podcast? Like what made that come to fruition? I want to talk about your podcast because that's awesome. You took the reins from, everything I just learned about you from starting, in Subway to getting into automotive, with Parts Edge. How did the podcast become a thing for you?
It was kind of one of those things during and after COVID where I started to get more active on LinkedIn because there was like networking and like reaching out to people was like, we were in this like weird, awkward, like, I don't want to sell you on like, it was just weird.
How do I speak to you? Yeah.
I know the world's kind of falling apart, but I still have a job. So,
right. There's a little that like survivor syndrome. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I got more active on LinkedIn, and then I discovered, all the great podcasts that were, especially with fixed ops, that were not there a few years ago. So I started going on other people's podcasts, and I realized all the fixed ops ones that are out there are really great, but I realized that there wasn't really a parts one. There were fixed ops, but there was still
I love it.
Yeah, there was still service. So, and I just was like, you know what, I want to start one. And although I think right now I'm still kind of figuring things out and I'm not totally focusing on all parts because I kind of want to be an umbrella of not only stay in parts. I know a lot of people that aren't just in the parts department. So that's kind of where it came from of like, I want to start one that's about parts. I want to get to know people. I want to be the one interviewing, asking the hard questions.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What's your favorite part of doing it?
I love the fact that you say I'm still trying to figure it out because I'm markedly more mature in age than you are. And Ron, I'm still trying to figure it out. And by the way, we all are always still trying to figure it out. If you're in growth mode mentality throughout your life, you're always trying to figure things out. And I love that. I love the fact that you just decided to do it. Most of it is, and it's funny because my buddy SJ 24/7, Scott Joseph, he's the CEO over at J&L Digital Marketing. He called me years ago and he said, "Hey, how'd you get your podcast started?" And I was kind of laughing to myself because, as Ron knows, I am as extemporaneous and impromptu as they get. I don't like to rehearse. I just want to be authentic and real. And I think that is that's the only way I could ever do it. And so
if he's listening right now, he's pulling out his dictionary for that extemporaneous word there, Sandy.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah. Well, he has one because I sent him one for Christmas. I said, "Perfect. You might want to try opening it up once in a while."
Amen. Okay?
So anyway, he says, "How did you get started?" And I said, truthfully, we had something to say, so we pressed record on the camera, and that was it. I mean, we didn't overcomplicate getting started. And I think a lot of times folks do overcomplicate getting started. They get ready to get ready. Zig Ziglar, the great Zig Ziglar, has a great YouTube video. It's a little hokey and dated, but the message is right on the money. It's called Cooked in the Squat. So if you're out there in the audience and you want something that's entertaining and that's going to, make you think about taking action and getting something done, Cooked in the Squat is awesome. It's Zig Ziglar at his all-time best, but getting ready to get ready becomes a challenge for folks. It's just a matter of, like, I love you rolled up your sleeves and just went and did it. What's the in your opinion, what is the single best catalyst for you career-wise so far to date? What is the one thing that you've done or the one belief that you've instilled in yourself that has really been a catalyst for your success so far?
Oh, wait, can you re-ask that question?
So I want to know what's really driving your success. Can you point to one thing or one decision that you made or one thing that you do on a regular basis that drives your success and catalyzes your career at this point?
gosh, there's a few things. I think when I was going through that transition of leaving San Diego, I really focused on myself, and I was going through a lot of loss. So I lost my grandma, my dad, my childhood dog, all in the matter of
Oh
a
my
year.
God.
So it was horrible. But I got a lot from that. And I think practicing gratitude every day was one thing that
Amen.
I instilled in my day. And I was a lot more, I did it a lot more often back then. I still do it now, but I was a lot more routine about it. And I also didn't have a child at that time. So things were like,
It complicates things a little bit, right? Now we get somebody else to worry about.
yeah, and you have to kind of adjust. But so yeah, I think doing gratitude every day and focusing on myself and just and my perspective on things and just kind of going within. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. And then I learned I'm just not as hard on myself now. I I feel like I was really hard. Yeah. I still am hard on myself. There's
I think it's such a great point, because I think you have to know when to be hard on yourself and when to give yourself a damn break. Especially in today's world. I mean, we can live in such a cynical environment sometimes where people just love to pounce. And that 6-inch space in between our ears, I say it to Ron all the time, it can be the most fertile, soil for ideas that you'll ever find. And it can also be a minefield, where you're blowing toes off left and right with every step you take, based on what you're telling yourself. And so I think it's such a great point that you make is, give yourself a break every once in a while. Just say it's okay, especially if we screwed up. I mean, every one of us does that. By the way, we talk about this, and Kaylee, this speaks to, when we talk about the process of business development and helping people make the best decision possible for them. The single biggest fear that most buyers have, whether we're talking B2B or B2C, it really doesn't matter, is making a mistake or making a bad decision. And so the more that we can do to help them make the very best decision possible for them, is where we see success. So making mistakes is okay. Our role in the capacity that we serve you and Ron and myself is to help our clients and our prospects objectively make the best decision possible for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Makes sense.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah, no doubt. I don't know if you had this up before. Michael Poro says, properly ran, the parts department should and is the most profitable department. Well, I'm going to take a line out of Michael's repertoire, Kaylee, and I'll share it with you. He says, with his vehicles, very often he likes to accessorize. And as he says, run them through the parts department with a magnet. So I know that he means what he says. He's a practitioner of what he preaches, which is one of the things that I love about him. And he just put over here, properly ran. No, I'm sorry. The more, there we go. The more we fail, the more we make. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's no question. We learn from our experiences. It's something that I hear in your feedback, Kaylee, is that you have been learning from the things that maybe you consider mistakes in the past, but you didn't repeat them. You learned from them. I love that. It's a great quality.
Thank you.
And as we wrap up here too, Kaylee, we are coming up on the hour. I'm curious, at this stage of your career, what's your favorite part about what you do, and what's the most exciting thing that you're looking forward to in the industry as we go into 23?
I can't talk. I'm really excited to
I said members earlier instead of members, so don't worry.
That's right. It's all good.
3 thoughts that I was excited about. So I'm like, which one do I say first?
Right, yeah.
I think to get some support and get a team, because I'm the only one doing sales and marketing. And so I'm really excited to have someone help support, especially get more meetings for me, because that's my favorite part about what I do is having those meetings with dealerships and having those conversations are the most exciting part of my day, because I'm like, yes, someone is excited to talk about their parts department.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that for just a second, Kaylee. We talk about, the ability to book a meeting or get on somebody's calendar. Is that a big challenge for folks in your capacity these days, do you think?
I would say to get on my calendar?
No, for you to get on, a prospect's calendar to get time.
Sometimes it is. I run into that, but I feel like because of what I've been doing, people are kind of like recognizing me a little bit more, and they're like, okay, I do want to talk to you. Whereas
Right.
before they didn't really know. They're like, what the heck is Parts Edge? So I think it's a little bit easier now, and I don't know. I'm turning green.
No, I think you're right on the money. Like when you start to have some level of market awareness for who you are and what you do, it makes it easier for folks when they know who you are. You know that you're just not one of this cacophony of voices on the other end of the line or at the other end of an email invitation to share some time. It certainly helps. You know, we talk about it in one of our programs called the 7 Pillars of Killer Business Development. You know, creating high value differentiation and then brand awareness for yourself. You know, how do you create that killer brand so that folks know who you are? I love what you've done with the Parts Lady podcast and the Parts Lady piece of it. Nobody else out there is doing it. So you've created a great lane within a lane that's very, I think, very open and not very crowded on the parts side. So I think it's brilliant what you've done. And you're seeing the benefit of branding yourself as the Parts Lady. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and it's Parts Girl. Sorry.
Excuse me, Parts Girl. Parts Girl.
Parts Lady, Parts Girl. Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what's happening.
Make sure I gotta adjust that. Make sure we got that. The Parts Girl. I like the Parts Girl. It's got a better ring to it. I'm gonna put it up there. There we go. The part. Nope. Hold on.
You might still be lady right now. That's all right.
I saved it, but I tried to put it up there.
Well, I don't know if I'm a lady sometimes.
There you go. Every inch a lady, Kaylee, come on. Don't be ridiculous.
Oh, stop it.
The Parts Girl podcast. I love that you branded yourself in that regard because it sets you apart from everybody else out there. It's easy to remember too. It's got a ring to it. The Parts Girl podcast has a ring to it. Anything that's got a ring to it, is easy for folks to remember. How about tell us a little bit about what may be coming up on the Parts Girl podcast? Do you have any guests coming up in the next couple of weeks that we should know about and point people towards?
Yeah, I'm really excited. I had a parts manager who was a woman who reached out to me to want to be on the show. And that was really exciting and kind of a win because I'm like, they're listening.
That's more than kind of a win. That's a monster win.
That's
I love
huge.
It was awesome. And she was like, and so she was really excited but nervous. And
what is her name, Kaylee? Do you have her name?
Ellen Haney.
Okay, Ellen Haney. Awesome. Shout out to Ellen Haney.
Yeah, Ellen Haney and her service manager, Shonda Miller. They both came on.
I'm seeing that so much today, and this is something worth noting. I'm seeing more and more women leaders in the service and parts area of our business, which I think speaks volumes to their ability to marshal and organize resources effectively. And they've got the ability, they're a little bit more empathetic and understanding and know how to handle clients and the client experience more effectively. So it makes me excited to see that because I think it's going to elevate our industry and elevate the professions most effectively. Yeah. So when will that podcast air?
Oh gosh, I think it's going to air in December.
Okay, beautiful.
Friday. Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah, keep us posted so we could share it to our network too.
Yeah, please. It's important because that's the network piece of it, right, Ron? I'm going to give us a chance to get it out into our network as well so we can promote your podcast. I'm a firm believer in just growing the pie bigger for everybody.
No doubt.
Kaylee, as we wrap over here, I'm gonna ask you a quick question. You say you like to ask the hard questions. This is the one hard question that I ask, and that is if I gave you a magic cell phone and you could talk to yourself at the very beginning of your career, what would you be saying to yourself right now?
I don't think I would change anything because I feel like what would I say to myself?
I guess anything. Yeah, just what would you
say? Well, what would I say? Yeah. Okay. I think I would say I would try to tell myself to be patient a little bit more and because I feel like I expected results to be a lot sooner than because what I'm experiencing now, I thought, it would happen in a couple of years. Well, it took like 5 years, but that's just the way it happened. So I think I would tell myself to be more patient and it was a career question, right? Not like life.
Just anything, life or career, whatever you want to tell yourself.
They're intertwined for us, Kaylee. So.
Yeah, that's true. I think patience is probably the biggest thing.
Well, I love it because you hear all the time people say that, that overnight success took so long to happen.
Sure.
For every one of us.
It doesn't happen overnight, right?
No, I think, we are all subject to the social media phenomenon. You look like an angel. Don't worry about it. That
Yeah,
light
it's okay. Let the light shine on you, Kaylee.
is perfect.
Oh, there. I'll hold the curtain. I have a curtain that's
No worries. Most people are seeing on social media either total bullshit, let's be honest, or they're seeing the effect of a lot of hard work that has gone in behind the scenes, and they're getting a sliver of the success moment, as opposed to everything that went in up to it. And Tony Robbins says it best. He says, we tend to overestimate what we can achieve in the short term and underestimate what we can achieve in the long term if we're consistent and we stick to it and we're disciplined and we're willing to put the work in. So I want to congratulate you.
I just had a thought.
Go share, baby.
One other thing I was going to say was the patience was important, but also not comparing myself. I think I did a lot of comparing. Huge. Yeah. You don't know what's going on in that person's life, or that's what reminded me of like the success and what social media does to people. It's like the comparing has to stop. Like you can't compare yourself. And it's something I constantly work on.
It's awesome relative experience, not just for young ladies in our industry or coming into our industry, for anybody. Young, old, male, female, I don't care what color you are, none of that matters. Your relative experience that you just shared is so prescient and so valuable. And I hope people take it to heart, because it speaks to how you can persist through the challenges early on in any career or any difficult situation and grow a life and grow a career in the process. And so I want to really applaud who you are, because I really have great feel for the energy of who you are, and I love it. Ron was excited about this podcast. He told me, this is going to be one that you're really going to appreciate. He was not wrong. So I want to thank you for your generosity and your candor and being open and honest, because that's what helps people. What you don't realize is you don't know what you've said today is going to impact and how it's going to impact them and catalyze their career as well. So kudos to you and thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
I hope you'll come back and join us. We always like to revisit podcast guests later on down the road. We've got a lot happening over the course of the next year. 2023 is going to be a bellwether year for sure. So let's make sure we get it on the calendar to get together with you again on the podcast, because we'd love to catch up and get an update on what's happening in the Parts Girl podcast world. I got that right finally.
That's right.
And in Kaylee's life in general. But I want to thank you for appearing here on the Automotive Info Report. Ron, any last thoughts?
No, thank you as well, Kaylee. You've been gracious with your time, and we truly appreciate you. And we're here arm in arm with you. Anything we're just
anything we can do to help you
or
Edge. And Chuck and Cliff, you please let us know. We're happy to do it. In the meantime, we're going to wrap by letting folks know we've created a very, very smart and simple and easy to use tool. It's a technician stall and optimization calculator. And Kaylee, I'd love for you to share it with your audience and with your contacts, because we take a look at recession proofing our car dealerships as we move forward into 2023. There's two things that we really need to focus on. Number one is we got to make sure that we've got the most proficient operation with respect to service and parts that we can possibly have. And so taking a look at what the average value of a technician is in your specific dealership, we've created a tool to do that. You just have to go to recessionproofcardealer.com. It's free. We're not asking a penny for it, but you can use your own numbers. So you can plug in your own technician count, effective labor rates, parts to labor ratio, gross profit retention percentages on parts and labor. So you can use that to determine the value and then optimize your operation. You can also do it for stalls. I've had a lot of dealers ask about, how do I get more out of my service department right now? And my first question is, well, is every bay filled? Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. Are you looking at an additional half shift or a shift to maximize and optimize production? You can get some details at recessionproofcardealer.com. The other thing I want to say is, the show today is brought to you by Business Bourbon and Cigars, number 5, coming to you live in San Antonio at the La Cantera Resort and Spa in San Antonio, Texas. It's going to be magnificent. We were down last week finalizing the details. The location is incredible. The resort is magnificent. And so for dealers and managers who are curious, it's very limited seating. As a matter of fact, it will sell out again. We've had 4 straight sellouts. It'll sell out again. You can go to businessbourboncigarsfordealers.com. That's businessbourboncigarsfordealers.com, and you can register right away. Very easy to do online as well. And we've got, I think, 2 trial sponsored partner seats at a significantly reduced rate for folks that aren't sure whether or not it's for them. You can join us at that event. You can get more information for that at businessbourboncigarsevent.com. Businessbourboncigarsevent.com. In the meantime, we're going to wrap it. Kaylee, thank you so much. We got to step up to stand out, and we're out.
Take it easy, everybody.